If you ever find yourself in the 41st millennium, you're actually very unlikely to even see a Space Marine. However, if you do see one, there is a good chance that it will be a son of Roboute Guilliman. For it is thought that the majority of chapters in the Imperium are successors of the Ultramarines. And that could be far worse. The Ultramarines are exemplars of everything it means to be a Space Marine. They are noble, honourable and utterly dedicated to the defence of humanity and the Emperor's realm. They are led by the awakened Primarch Roboute Guilliman himself. And so, of course, they follow the Codex Astartes as it was penned by their Genefather. Of all of the Space Marine chapters, the Ultramarines are widely considered to be the most strategically balanced. They are masters of grand strategy and flexible battle tactics, wielding the weapons of war with consummate skill, and following adaptive and expertly laid battle plans that see their enemies outmaneuvered and annihilated in short order. We march for Macragge! So what did you think of our fair country?
It was a good time. I'm glad I went. It'd been the first time I'd ever been to England, so it was a nice trip. I met some friendly people, obviously yourself, plenty of other Warhammer content creators, some nice people who kept me company when I got there Friday and didn't realize that Fest doesn't start till Saturday. That was a bit of a goof, but hey, met some friends and.
Easily done.
Made some friends, had a couple drinks, and it was a good time.
Yeah, it was really cool meeting you, man. I mean, it was one of those things. I think the Remembrancer reached out to like a bunch of people and was like, "Hey, do you want to do meetups?" And it was kind of interesting because so many of them are voice only in their content. So it was interesting seeing that they have faces, and we can actually confirm they do.
Yeah, they are human beings. They're not just AI generated. It was especially because
it's one guy with 10 different channels.
Because like it was always it's like I've known like as much as Andy Hal for a while. It was like just meeting them, like you said, was cool. It's like you're a human being. You have a face. I actually have proof of it now.
Yeah, it was super cool. The warrior tier guys as well, because I didn't know what they would really look like.
Oh yeah.
Because, of course, all you hear is the amazing voices. So it was like what they really look like. And actually, that was actually gutting for me because my self-esteem is held up solely by the fact that I am kind of tall. And to meet them, and they are giant people, was devastating. Horrible way to start our fest. What did you actually think of Warhammer Fest? It's been, by the time this comes out, I assume there will have been many different videos on what people thought of Warhammer Fest. What did you think? Did you like it?
I liked it. It was like, I don't know. It was I don't think it was the best convention I've been to. Like there were some lines.
Yeah.
Like they only had the couple tables for like 10th. I would have been really excited to try 10th, but I wasn't willing to commit to 4 hours. But I mean, it was still cool. I mean, they had a lot of other stuff, like everything else was, I think, pretty well done. Like seeing the whole section of the tournament, just being able to walk around, see people's games, see the models. Golden Team was really cool. I thought it was great. I think like the only real criticism I have is I wish there was a couple like more like for everything they had, like a few more registers or like just a few different lines. But overall I thought it was good. How about you, man? What'd you think of it?
Yeah, I think pretty similar, which I think from the couple of people's videos I've seen, I think it's the general opinion, where it was like, I really liked it. And also I'm quite forgiving for them because I appreciate they haven't done one in quite a few years and they haven't had one with this many people. And it was because it was so many years, it might be like a brand new team of people who organized this and it was essentially their first event and what have you. But yeah, there was some stuff. It was like, did you guys not think 10th edition would be popular? And if you did think that, why did you only bring 5 tables?
Yeah.
And then there's like a thing of like, oh, well, it's, only so many people could be trained up to run the tables. And it's like, but you guys made hundreds of thousands of pounds from this event. Wouldn't it have been worthwhile paying a few more people? It was a bit odd. And like, I wouldn't say like, don't go to it or anything like that. I would just, I don't know. I hope they kind of acknowledge it. And next Warhammer Fest, they make a point of being like, this year we're going to make sure there's a lot more stuff to do, and yeah, that would be good. But having you guys there, and there were so many awesome people there, that it was quite easy to fill the time. But realistically, GW probably shouldn't rely on that, because or else we don't really need that.
Yeah, at that point, it's like, how about we just all, we can all hop in a Discord call or go to a field and somewhere in England and just chill out for a bit.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, cool. Well, welcome to M3. This is the first podcast I've done on the channel. Thought you'd be the perfect place to start. From your YouTube name, it appears you are Pancreas Snow Orc. Thank you very much for coming, man.
Thanks for having me. I'm honored to be the first guest.
I mean, if you haven't checked out Pancreas No Work on YouTube, it's a phenomenal channel. It's really funny. I think you've really come in with kind of a unique style, and I think people have responded very strongly to it. And yeah, phenomenally successful, mate. So well done.
Appreciate it.
But today I've got you here to talk about Roboute Guilliman, because one of the 20 Primarchs, the genetically engineered demigods created by the Emperor himself, it was Guilliman who led the Ultramarines during the Great Crusade, directing his legion to triumph after triumph. His tactical prowess and military organisation reckoned superb even by his Primarch brothers. The Emperor fell slaying the arch-traitor Horus, and it was Guilliman that took up his father's burning blade. Guilliman's way is not to raise and destroy, but to conquer and build, to leave not ruins but the groundwork for a better, nobler civilization for mankind. Yet he was not given a chance to realise that dream. Guilliman was mortally wounded at the Battle of Thessala by a poisoned blade of his brother Fulgrim and placed in emergency stasis. When Guilliman was restored by the artifice of Mars and the soul magic of the Eldari, the Primarch was privately aghast. Instead of finding the galactic society dreamt of by the Emperor, he saw only mindless morbidity. Healed but forever wounded in his soul, Roboute Guilliman now leads mankind once more as the Imperium teeters on the brink of catastrophe.
Part of the charm of Warhammer is that everyone in it can be a massive, idiot and just the worst person ever. Which, I hope I'm not breaking any grounds or breaking any hearts with that the people in Warhammer are not the nicest around. That makes the setting very appealing and unique. But that being said, when you throw someone into the mix who's basically, willing to use his head a bit, and he thinks things through. His whole thing is he's very level-headed, he's logical, he's reasonable, he's willing to talk and make compromise. He stands out for that reason, because a lot of other people are they're blind, dogmatic, which is great. That's a lot of the whole setting, like the Imperial cult, the blind faith in the Emperor, Chaos Gods. Very great parts of the setting. But Guilliman stands out all the more because of it, because he's like, I'm going to use my head, I'm going to think. I'm going to take things easy for a bit and figure it out.
It's not that other Primarchs don't also try and do the same thing, but he's probably the Primarch that the writers have done it most successfully with. I mean, just like in terms of a writing style, if you've never read any of Guilliman's books, he often has like a bit where he'll go theoretical, practical, and trying to figure things out. And it's one of the things that's really interesting. So like one of the things that I love about Guilliman is that he hasn't really beaten any Primarch, like one-on-one, like straight fight through sheer brute force. And the reason that's cool is because he has also beaten a few of them. But the reason he beats them is because of intelligence or him using outside factors. I mean, Sisters of Silence are always a cheap shot to beat Magnus the Red. I think Black Library have made Magnus the Red far too powerful to come up with any other solution to beat him. But outside of that, he's been quite interesting. And he does lose. He lost to Fulgrim, of course, and he would have lost to Angron and all that kind of thing. So yeah, it makes him a much more interesting character to follow. He has an actually interesting fury. When Russ or the Lion is angry and threatening traitors, it's just another Tuesday. But when Guilliman says to Lorgar, I will gut you, I will cut your heart out, it lands much harder, in my opinion.
Yeah, because he doesn't get angry too often. When he does, it's like, oh, someone really did something bad, didn't they? Someone really screwed up.
And yeah, I know you're not a Horus Heresy fan as such, but Have you read any of his 40k stuff?
I've actually started reading the Dark Imperium. I totally blanked out on that. Only a little bit way through. Yeah. I grabbed it while I was actually in Manchester.
He's a phenomenally interesting character, and I think it was probably the perfect choice to return to the setting of 40k as the first Primarch, because out of everybody, he'd probably respond the best to the Imperium as it is today.
If you want to talk spoilers, by the way, I don't mind. I've read the synopsis of everything. I'll be honest. Okay. It's just a matter of like the details might miss a bit, but the overarching things I know what happens.
Okay, so one of the things that makes Guilliman so interesting is his ability to adapt to situations, something that a lot of the Primarchs seemingly fail to do in the stories. So, during the third novel, Godblight, Guilliman and Mortarion have their final fight. Now, I don't know if Guy Haley had just recently watched Star Wars, but you do have to admit there are some rather Jedi-like things that happen. For example, Guilliman safely absorbs a psychic blast with the Emperor's sword. Guilliman reminds Mortarion that he spoke at the Council of Nicaea and that he has become everything that he hated, and Mortarion requests for Guilliman to join him, and together they will throw down their brother's false gods. The duel ends, of course, with a pretty solid Mortarion victory, and he injects Guilliman with the deadly Godblight, and Guilliman starts dying. Again, as he dies, reality fades, and he and Mortarion get taken to the Garden of Nurgle, and Guilliman has a vision, which Mortarion also sees, of when Guilliman met with his father after 10,000 years back on Terra. So things are going pretty badly for Guilliman. However, dun dun dun, Guilliman had a plan all along, it seems. Now, the logic of this is not set in stone. However, to me, this is how things appear to have gone down roughly. So we know that the Emperor of Mankind is more powerful now than during the Heresy or Great Crusade. We know that the Great Rift has made him even stronger, and there's even a suggestion that the faith from the Imperial cult has even started to have an effect on Guilliman, essentially kind of empowering him in some way. And so, and this is where there's a bit of a leap in logic, to be honest, if you can just get a shit ton of librarians, I think there's something like 20 vehicles in total full of them, and they conduct a ritual under the instruction of an Eldar Ulthwé Farseer named Iyanden, that can connect the Emperor to Guilliman somehow. That's basically how I think things have gone down. Now, this results in the Emperor's psychic might flowing through Guilliman, and he was able to spring back to life, send his brother back to an angry Nurgle, and he channels the Emperor's might directly through his father's sword and unleashes a psychic attack that actually burns the Garden of Nurgle itself and is even said to have hurt the grandfather. He also threatens Nurgle directly, which is pretty badass. It's an amazing scene, and fundamentally, you know, a lot of people don't like modern 40k lore, but if you can read that final part of the book where we see what happens as he goes through the doors into the throne room, and you know, your imagination just runs wild with this scene. It's incredible writing. If that does nothing for you, you are dead inside. I've no other answer. But the scene is somewhat undercut by a very interesting writing decision, where essentially when Guilliman and Mortarion kind of rock up and they go towards each other, Mortarion basically has this thought process, and this is really not an exaggeration, where he goes, that's a lot of librarians. It's a really strange number of librarians, and then does nothing with this information. So then they fight, and then what do you know? Those librarians turn out to be key to his and Nurgle's defeat in Ultramarines.
They're there for a reason. They're not just hanging out.
It was so clever to have Guilliman be able to kind of weaponize faith in order to beat Mortarion, but the fact that the Primarch who spoke at the edict of the Council of Nicaea doesn't think about the librarians there. It was so if they had written that just a bit better, it would have really made that scene for me. But
you think, especially like you said, he's the guy who hates psychers the most. He's like, those psychers probably aren't doing anything. I don't got to worry about them too much. They're just hanging out.
Yeah, I mean, one of the bits you probably will have covered, like at the start, I think, of Dark Imperium, there's that bit where Mortarion's got his like the soul of his father, and he's he's just captured it, and he just tortures it periodically, and you're like,
yeah, it's like his version of a stress ball.
Yeah, yeah, literally, yeah. But yeah, gotta ask, so how come you haven't read the Horus Heresy? Is it just defiance against the pressure from the community?
It's all right. So I will admit there is a little bit of that in it, like a similar thing. I'll be honest. My friends tried to get me into Game of Thrones for years, and at a certain point, I started saying no, not even because I wasn't interested. It would just annoy them. Although I guess in the end with Game of Thrones, I kind of got vindicated with that ending. Although.
Well, the final Siege of Terra book is now.
I'm not wishing the Game of Thrones season 8 on the Siege of Terra. I would never do such a thing. But the other,
the new emperor is going to be like, I don't know, called Pharaoh.
Oh God, yeah, he's been on the throne forever.
Who has a better story?
Oh, but the larger reason is just I know as a 40K man on YouTube, this is gonna probably not sound great, but I don't really care for Marines, and the Horus Heresy is Marines the adventure. It's I've always been a Xenos man and or like the Guard. Like I've read all the Caiaphas Cain books; those are phenomenal books. I was actually since I picked up Dark Imperium, I didn't start reading it yet, but I've got Gaunt. I'm gonna read through. It's just Marines never interested me. I shouldn't say never interested me, because like I played the Space Marine video game, and Death Hulk. Playing as a Space Marine, like in that universe, oh my God, it's fantastic. Walking around stomping everyone into mulch. But it's otherwise, I don't know. I play Eldar. I collect them. I just don't much care for Marine stories, to be honest.
Yeah, so why is that? What is it about?
I guess a couple things. Like, one is I get sick of the author favoritism is part of it. Like, I can only read so many stories where, GW saying they're some of the last, they're outnumbered, they're outgunned, they're the last humanity's bravest warriors, but even they're going through it.
Yeah.
And then Marneus, Calgar, Solos, the Avatar of Cain. And then I'm like, it's just, I'm not into it. And also it's because there's so many, like, what is it? There's 1,000 chapters, there's 1,000 Marines each, just roughly. So there's about 1 million Marines. Isn't that the lore? Like, there's supposedly 1,000 Space Marine chapters in the Imperium listed anyways.
Yeah, that was originally the idea. And actually, the majority of them are
Ultramarine successor chapters.
It's like a weird thing.
But it's, I think I'll compare it, if a brief sidetrack, compare it to Halo. Master Chief's cool, because there's one Master Chief. When I guess there's 34 Spartans, 2s. When you have 1,000 Master Chiefs, and then 999 other groups of 1,000 Master Chiefs, I don't really care about the effort being put in by him, because him and his hundreds of thousands of twin brothers are all doing the same thing, and it just kind of loses its luster. Plus, in the setting, when a Space Marine does something cool, it's cool, but it's it's a Space Marine doing it. But like when Caiaphas Cain takes down a Khornate Berserker, I read that and I'm like, wow, this guy's awesome.
Yeah. No, totally get what you mean there. And I think you're not alone. A lot of people prefer that. There's always that like definition of bravery. Actually, Batman says it, right? He's like, you're not brave, men are brave. In fact, he says that to Henry Cavill, now that I think about it. But where like, you're somewhat less brave if you kind of know you can take on 100 ones and still win. But no, I get what you mean. I mean, that's fair. I think I'm what I think you'd call basic when it comes to Warhammer. I love Primarchs and I love Space Marines, and I totally get what you mean. I guess the raw difference is I can read that same scene 9,000 times where like they're the last line of defense.
It's and I should say it's not me going, oh, they're bad. No, it's like fool if you like them. It's like, no, they're
no, you made yourself clear.
It's like I can accept they're the poster boys of the franchise of 40K for a reason, and it's a good reason because Space Marines are awesome. It's just and it's like if you ever played a game or something and you go or watch a movie and it's like, I know this is good, objectively as much as you can be with that. I know this is good, this is awesome, it's great. It's just not for me. Is what it boils down to. For the sake of comedy, I will admit I do embellish a bit in my videos sometimes, but ultimately what it comes down to, they're just don't hit me the right way. They're not my vibe.
No, that's fair enough. I mean, yeah, that makes sense. But so okay. Well, do you have any Ultramarines yourself, or?
I actually do. That being said, my the first Warhammer models I got 2 little kits. There were these old 3-in-1, like they come 3 models. They're clipped together, no glue needed. Some paints and a paintbrush. I got one of the Stormcast Eternals and one of the Space Marines, the 3 Primarchs Intercessors. And the paints they give you were for the Ultramarines, so I painted them as Ultramarines. And then my first regular kit was a squad of Tactical Marines, and they were Ultramarines too.
Nice. Yeah, it's a nice base to start. I kind of went like another way, the opposite way really. I got given a bunch of Ultramarines by my friend Connor, who still plays to this day. And I painted over them. Just straight over them in the size of the Emperor scheme, which is a very difficult scheme to do that I did not do justice to whatsoever. But there is, now I regret it because there is something just really sharp about that blue. So I can understand, like you say, I understand why they're the poster boys. Yeah. They look good. They're the Emperor's favorite legions.
The blue and gold, it's very striking.
Yeah, I actually got the Guilliman in Imperium magazine. Ooh. And that trim nearly killed me. It's just
I've had them sitting on that table back there for about 2 years now, because every now and then, like once a month, I'll add a couple different lines to the miniature, and then I keep going, and then I'm like, this is so detailed that it's stressing me out, and then I go paint Skaven, because the worse it looks, the more lore accurate they are.
Yeah, I mean, I've got 6 shells of Dark Angels here, so that might somewhat sway my opinion on this, but like that was a really nice thing about the line model is
it's very approachable.
Yeah. So he's a much more approachable Primarch to paint, but and he also looks less like Joffrey, which was I think really highlighted when they made the lion look like
Tywin. He does, so he does look like Tywin though. So.
Are you a big fan of any of the 40k Ultramarines like Uriel Ventress or Cato Sicarius?
I do like, that being said, as much as it hurts he 1v1'd my Avatar Arcane, I do like Calgar. I like that bit of his when they acted.
You can't hold that against him.
No, it's like at this point, it's like, it's the Avatar of Cain. You're not cool until you beat him up, and even then, so many people beat him up.
Yeah.
But no, like that bit where they worked with the Lamenters, and he gifted them the Iron Halo, but they said no because they didn't feel they were worthy, and if I remember correctly, he was pretty cool about it. He's like, I get it. He was a cool guy about it, and everyone else was kind of yelling at them for turning down the glorious gift. Calgar was like, calm the hell down, everyone. They're being noble. And I like Calgar. Captain Titus from the Ultramarines video game. Real excited to see him coming back.
There's a series of things that we've got on the horizon now that could be, a renaissance for 40k. And that's an important step. Obviously, the end goal or end kind of play is Henry Cavill's series on Amazon. Ooh, yeah. But there's been a series of 40k games that have been pretty good. We've seen how, Total War, it's probably fair to say Total War has brought back the old world just because of how popular the old world has become through that game. So many people played it, and it used to be dead. Like I was watching the painting phase, and Peachy was saying like how when he was in the store, no one would buy old world stuff. So it's kind of insane that so many people are into it now. If Space Marine 2, if that lands well, and like you say, Titus was a good character, like him and the Leandros and that kind of relationship, and you left that game with a bunch of questions about 40k. Yeah. That's what was really clever about it. You left the game like, hang on, who are these Inquisition guys? and who are these black Space Marines who he's with, and like what's going on here. So it was so interesting, and we still haven't really had that like answer, because we still don't really know. I think why he was so resistant to the war. Do you have any idea? What's your theory? I
remember reading like scraps of an interview a while ago, vaguely. Like they did have plans for a couple more games, but unfortunately, I think it didn't go super into specifics on that, and B, I think just what ended up happening was, I mean, the company that was making the game went under. I'm pretty sure, so it's just a matter of like they couldn't make more of the game, which is why when I saw the game was coming back, I was like, Space Marine 2. That's a shocker that game of all of them is getting not only a sequel but happening at all. So I hope they address it, because I'm really excited.
Yeah, I mean, and also he's done, I mean, however long in the Death Watch. And, because like the obvious answer, of course, is that he would be a blank. But I mean, I don't know exactly off the top of my head, but I am pretty sure that is screened for in the what they call it, the trials of Space Marines.
You probably know.
I mean, whatever it is going to be pretty cool. But if there's basically this law that the Ultramarines have the only Space Marine blank, that would be pretty. That would genuinely be a really interesting plot point, and how the other Ultramarines react to him. Maybe that would explain why Leandros is such a dick. So that would be pretty exciting. I can't wait for that game. It's going to be really good. Do you know if they've got Mark Strong back for actually?
I heard they don't. I was talking, I think Hal had mentioned it.
I was thinking about it in the trailer. I mentioned this in a video. Is he's got, I think is it 4 gold studs? I'll have to check. The gold studs that he's got, typically silver is 50 and gold is 100 years. Now that would actually make him the longest serving Ultramarine, because I think in the Ultramarines supplement it says Cassius is the longest serving Ultramarine, but he's like 200 and something years. So admittedly time has moved on quite a bit, to be fair, by the time he's
a Primarchs now.
In theory he's probably one of the oldest serving Space Marines as well, Ultramarines at least. And just narratively, it's on its own, it's a very exciting thing. And then we've got this thing of like, they've shown all the like new assault intercessors in that, which are not like, because the obvious thing would have been to put them into the new box, but they're not even in the next wave of Space Marines. So we've got at least those coming in some future, and GW will sell a Titus model when the game comes out, and so it's a hell of an exciting time actually. So I really can't wait for this game. But Total War is your thing.
Oh yeah, Total War and Warhammer Fantasy are my specialties, because it's how I got into Warhammer. Yeah. At least properly. I did a couple of the classic 3-hour-long wiki dives that tells me nothing, because it's all nouns and names I have no context for. But I get you. The Total Warhammer was the first thing I sat down. I was like, all right, I like Total War, so I'm going to check this out. And I loved it. And then I was like, all right, I want to learn more about it. And then it just went from there. Yeah,
it was kind of insane to have this whole map of, by the time we get to the game, the Immortal Empires. I feel like I'll never get bored of that game, because the number of the variation on campaigns you can play, it will just be some absurdly high number, which it's pretty awesome. And you are just an Elves. You mentioned your proclivity for the knife is, to use the slur that they always seem to get in the settings, but you are just a big Elf fan, right? Like in whatever variant,
for the most part, unless it's Elder Scrolls, in which case complete death.
Well, what's your favorite Elf type in fantasy?
I like I'm also quite a basic man. I like the High Elves. They're magic, they're arrogant, they tall, they're aloof archers.
So you like the arrogance?
I do like the arrogance. I think as long as it's earned, it needs to be earned, and I think the High Elves in fantasy at least have earned it.
That's okay, fair enough, that makes more sense. Because like in 40k, I've never really got the whole monkey thing, and like why they talk. I know it's got like it doesn't just mean monkey, it's got this longer backstory, but still the idea that you are so dismissive to the human race when you birthed a chaos god. It's like the idea that, oh, you guys are so naive and foolish. It's like, no, you you guys
made
are fucked
Slanesh,
up
buddy.
way more than we ever did.
It doesn't help that the arrogance doesn't feel earned when half the lore they're in is them getting just curb stomped.
One of the things about the Horus Heresy is there's a subplot involving a set called the Cabal, which you might have read. It's just like a cabal of races, and Eldrad is very prominent in that storyline. And he kind of turns around on it at one point, and he doesn't really feel bad about it ever. And it's like, you are the most. He's so the lack of humility on that man is insane. But yeah, I would love to see the Assassin the Emperor meet Eldrad. That would have been.
It was I don't remember the book where the Harlequins show up and start murdering custodies left and right. Doesn't one of them say like they used to be friends? If I remember correctly, like one of them was like, I think
in the
because I think the quote is like they're long diverged from friendship, but that implies we're friends.
What's actually interesting there is I'm a big fan of the theory that one of the reasons the Emperor waited till the point he did, or pushed things, he tried to like, there's this kind of idea that the Emperor was cutting corners, which is why like all the perpetuals turned on him and all that kind of thing. And one of the reasons he did this was because he had a vision, he had multiple visions of what was going to come in 40k. So the rise of a Great War under Gazgul Thraka, the invasion of the Tyranids, the Necrons waking up, that kind of thing, right? And part of that, those visions, was also the orcs at Ulanor, and they had to be defeated. And there's kind of like a subtle hints to say that's actually why the Great Crusade started when it did. And I always wondered, because he gave no quarter for the Eldar, despite the fact he knew that if the human race could use the webway, that would essentially circumvent our necessity on warp travel, and therefore humanity would be largely saved, or at least it would make fighting against the other threats much, much easier. Now, what's interesting about that is that if that's the point you want to get to, going to war with the Eldar seems a bit counterintuitive, especially if, for the large part, they don't wish you ill.
They mostly just want to be left alone.
I wonder if he had... I wonder if he had some sort of vision about the Eldar, and because like that's the only thing that makes sense to me as to why he would be so unrelenting in the purging of Xenos, because it's really counterintuitive to his aims to, in effect, to go
already
to
start another war when he's got 3 more on his plate. It's I've always assumed it's because, at least my interpretation of the Emperor, is that he's not a fan of things he's not controlling, that do not fall under his rule. And the Eldar would kind of...
He's definitely a control freak.
The Eldar would fall under that. There's no way they'd let him rule them. And so that, and the fact that I think there's also no way that they'd... maybe not no way, but he'd have to do a lot of work to get webway access. And I just imagine in his mind it was a lot easier to kill him, especially because they went from the premier galactic superpower for millions of years to merchant ships being really all that they had left, the craft worlds. So we could have just been, it's like, well, now's the time to go in.
Yeah. One of the things about the Ultramarines that's so interesting is the way that they're written is so much more complex than their kind of initial description, which is they are the all-rounders, the Emperor's chosen, and they're kind of
they're the vanilla.
Yeah, reflecting their rules. Yeah, they are the vanilla. But actually, in the books, they have a lot of personality, and of course, you have this heavy. I think technically it's a bit more Greek than Roman, but certainly ancient European kind of theme going on. And yeah, that provides a lot of intrigue. But also, you've got things like Knights of Macragge, and you've got the destroyer squads, and you've got lots of different kind of things that happen. Like I did a video on Tigurius recently. And like Tigurius is actually weirdly, like, Mephiston's a bit broken in the lore, but Tigurius is a monumentally powerful psyche, and probably second, like, to someone like the Mephiston from whatever I've read, because at least it's been slightly retconned now. but there was this idea that in the years ago, they were during the Battle of Macragge, and when the Ultramarines fought the Tyranids during when the Hive Fleet Behemoth, that he actually interfaced with the hive mind
without his brain exploding.
Yeah, exactly. It was completely monumental, and at the time, I think GW didn't really back down from that idea. But I think enough people kind of talked about it over the years, and were like, that actually kind of means he's like as powerful as like someone like the Emperor. And then eventually GW kind of went,
we gotta take Matt Ward away from the reins on this one.
There's definitely some stuff that went a bit far there. The staff of Malcador, it's like, why does of course the Ultramarines get that?
But it's still, very cool character, like you said.
One of the things that really intrigues me about Marneus Calgar was the fact that he actually loses to Abaddon.
Oh, yeah.
Because, and it's something that makes 40k very unique. When I was a kid, obviously Dante existed, and the idea of the prophecy of the Golden Warrior has been around for a long time, but certainly in the way I felt like White Dwarfs were written, the codexes were written, Marneus Calgar was the liege lord, I think was the quote, of the Space Marines, and him versus Abaddon in terms of how the models were posed, in terms of how things were written, it seemed like that would be the climactic battle. And they actually do finally fight on Vigilus. And Abaddon wins. He beats Marneus Calgar, and quite handedly, I think.
I was going to say, it's a pretty one-sided match in the end.
I think Calgar gets like a shot in or something like that, but yeah, Abaddon really tears him up. And that, like, who does that outside of 40k? It's very uncommon, but I thought it was really interesting, and I think that's GW officially kind of telling us, just so you all know, this guy is now like Primarch level. And it's never officially stated just how powerful Abaddon is. There's lots of nods to this idea of like Drachnien can cut through reality and is probably the most powerful weapon in existence, yada, yada, yada. But despite the fact we know he's got kind of like a crap ton of blessings from the gods, we don't know just how powerful he can go. But certainly, if he can just lay out Marneus Calgar, then that was incredibly amazing. But I will say, I'm not someone that loves to say the word plot armor. I always feel like it's overused. Like, I don't know exactly what the definition is, so I'm not going to say people are definitely wrong. But I would say something like the Tau Empire, when people say they survive through plot armor, it's like, well, the plot does explain why they survive, but that doesn't... Like, the Tau survive for a very kind of well thought out and written reason, which is that the ethereal cast and the water cast are very clever in how they present the Tau Empire to the Imperium.
How
the Imperium just doesn't see them as enough of a threat. But I will say, on Vigilus, when Abaddon, and he cuts through the gauntlets of Ultramar, and Marneus Calgar is laying there waiting to be finished, and Abaddon basically just doesn't kill him for no reason. That was probably a bit much. You could have done
like with Mortarion and the Psychers, like he's like, oh yeah.
You could have done something. So I thought, yeah, it was still really cool, and I'm a big Abaddon fan, so it was cool to see him be put to that level above Marneus Calgar. And I think one of the things you talked about recently was, should Primarchs return to the setting? And for me, like I say, I'm very basic in my love of Warhammer 40k, and I love Primarchs. And I am so sorry, but I adored every when Guilliman returned to Gathering Storm and he fought there, and when the Lion fought Angron, I nearly wept with how excited I was both of those times. But I will say, you make some very good points, and I think I have thought this for a long time, and I totally get it. And it's they do make a lot of things seem a lot worse, and Marneus Calgar, I think, really proves this point. Now, well done to Marneus Calgar, because he did get a deal with Disney. Fantastic. Good news for him.
He's the real winner.
But outside of that, he when you read the Dark Imperium trilogy, he is relegated for Marneus Calgar to have a pretty small place in the trilogy, really. Compared to a lot of what the other characters get. it's kind of crazy. It's it's really quite crazy, and to the degree that probably the most interesting thing that has happened to him is not based on any pre-existing lore, but there's essentially like a big reveal in his comic series that was completely wild. But but like I say, there's no real continuation of his story from the old lore from when I was a kid, because Guilliman just supplants.
He's here now.
Everything. They're gonna have to be really clever in not making, like, for example, every successor chapter feel like you don't matter anymore. Like this idea of in the Dark Imperium trilogy, they talk about, Guilliman talks about how it was a mistake splitting up the legions potentially, and disbanding the 500 worlds and all that kind of thing. And obviously the Lion wants to lead the Unforgiven. Unsurprisingly, there's going to be a lot of people with armies that might feel like, oh, we don't really matter anymore.
It's like they got to be careful, because otherwise they might just turn 40k into the Horus Heresy round 2.
Totally.
Which and again, I can't admit, as much as it's not my thing, Horus Heresy is cool. The sons of God all coming together to beat the hell out of each other. I'm not so blinded by my Eldar simpery that I can't admit, it's cool. People like it for a reason. But, people also like 40k for a reason. As much, Space Marines are cool, but Necrons are there too. Tyranids are there too. Orcs, I want to know what they're up to as well. And if it just becomes the Primarchapalooza, even my love for Guilliman can only carry me so far.
Because one of the things Games Workshop have discovered is that people like story. And this is, again, a pretty controversial topic, so I can't speak for everybody. But I do think the GW have kind of thought that actually most people want the story to go somewhere. And what I'm referring to there is this idea that a lot of people believe 40k should have remained at what people call like 5 minutes to midnight, which is this idea that the 13th Black Crusade is about to break forth. The majority of the Tyranids are about to arrive, and the Necrons are about to wake up, and Gazgul Thraka is about to make the greatest dog war ever, right? And so everything's going to go to hell. But now they've moved some stuff along, of course, and that's been very popular. And they're going to keep that idea going, right? And they actually said with A Dawn of Fire, they actually called it like, the 40k version of the Horus Heresy. And that creates some pretty big problems. A, is it going to be exactly like the Horus Heresy, like you say? And B, just like with Abaddon and the 13 Black Crusades, people go like, if he's failed for 13 Black Crusades, is this guy much of a threat? Then what's going to happen when he's got Imperium Nihilus, most of Vigilus, the Arcs of Omen? He's got all of these things. Everything's going in the right direction for him. There's going to be a certain point when we're just going to be like, sorry, why is Abaddon not at Terra? It's been 600 years since all the good stuff happened for him. Why does he not have a victory
yet? You can only say chaos fights itself so many times before it's like, well, even with that.
Yeah.
And it's such a double-edged sword, too, because especially, lore channels, we want new information. We want new stuff to come out. Because we're all Warhammer nerds at heart. We think it's cool, and also self-interested reasons. That's always a new video. But it's also, it's like that. What is it? Like nothing is ever going to be able to compete with what you come up with in your own head. So there's always very hard for GW to top decades of expectations for how this should play out.
No, for sure. Like as soon as you said those words, nothing matches it. Of course, in my head for decades, the idea of Lionel Johnson returning to the setting of Warhammer 40k is intrinsically linked to Cypher, and the fact that he was not there, and
it just kind of
Cypher had a book recently, and so there's a possibility he was connected. But putting that aside, from what we've had so far, it doesn't seem like Cypher is anything to do with the Lion's return. Genuinely breaks my heart a bit. Now I appreciate GW are very aware of the fact that Cypher is one of the most popular characters in 40k, so they want to keep him kind of at large, I guess, as it were. But that as much as I loved his return and I thought it was excellent and I really enjoyed his book, but not having Cypher there was wild.
There's always the threat of Warhammer 40k end times. Although that would be disastrous. Who knows? Maybe Guilliman and Abaddon will fall into the black hole in the galaxy, fighting over the Emperor's sword.
Yeah,
they really want to just 1-to-1 it.
Yeah, no, I really want to see Abaddon face down Guilliman, because they had the artwork at the start of 9th edition, and it was like, that was some nice artwork.
Their models from like 7th, was it? I think they Guilliman came out.
Yeah. And then
their model
base is kind of
like
opposite.
styled the same way but mirrored. It's like you've been like teasing us for 3 editions now.
In fact, I think I have both of them here. Yeah, yeah. So like, they both have like bits of like an eagle and stuff. So it's like, it kind of works. No, yeah, totally. Yeah, I always thought that was going to happen. Now that we've had 2 Primarchs back. When it was just Guilliman, I don't know if maybe it's just me. I kind of vaguely had this idea of like, maybe it will be just Guilliman. Maybe it will just be him, and he is the avenging son, so it kind of works. But now we've got 2.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody's kind of kidding themselves. I imagine the
Chaos has
3. I imagine the road to Fulgrim will be pretty swift.
Oh yeah,
like it's a very glaring hole in that range now.
You can't put the genie back in the bottle. They're not done coming back now.
Yeah. Have you got a prediction for next Loyalist?
I kind of want to see a little bit more information on what happens when the Lion and Guilliman really start going before I make a prediction about that. Out of what I think, just at the moment, is most likely, I'm going to go with Corax, just because we kind of know what he's been doing. So I think at the end of the day, all GW would really need to do is finally give him a model. Because what he's been doing is just screwing with Lorgar for 10,000 years, beating the hell out of him as a shadow demon.
Yeah.
Who I would like the most is Leman Russ, because I'm really hoping that tree of life he's looking for just so happens to be Isha in Nurgle's Garden. That could be a 1-2 punch. It's like, hey, you got Leman Russ and the Eldar are finally getting back in the game a little bit. So, but that's like we were talking about, nice. Nothing's better than our own head. That's my wildest, what I'd like the most out of it. And of course, it still involves the Eldar, so...
The Corvus thing is interesting, because I actually am not sure he has been messing with Lorgar for 10,000 years. Now, the reason this is interesting, because of course, even as I say that, I think we were talking about it on a Warhammer Fest, the actually people who will comment on they will already be frothing at the bit, and they will be saying, have you not read Sandman, Shadows of the Past? And I have read it. It's a tiny story, it doesn't take very long. But that story is actually set in the 32nd millennium.
Pretty freshly after the Heresy.
And so, it was about 1,000 years or so after the Heresy. So that was a long time ago. And one of the other things that they talk about in like the Chaos Space Marines Codex and a lot of the recent lore is this idea that Lorgar has been cited multiple times. Well, in theory, people always die. But in theory, he's been cited multiple times since then. So I think the more interesting story could be Lorgar's actually out. He's not being chased by Corvus. So what happened to Corvus? I think would be a much more interesting storyline rather than him banging on the wall for 10,000 years.
It would be cool. It's just I just like the funny mental image of just every time Lorgar tries to leave his like dark evil chaos tower, Corvus just shows up to smack the hell out of him. But yeah, something like that would narratively be more satisfying. It's just the image makes me giggle.
Yeah, but here's a question for you actually, because as someone who hasn't read the Horus Heresy, what do you think the most interesting relationship is amongst the Primarchs?
Oh boy, because there's a few. Because like I said, I've the book specifics are a bit beyond me, but I read about them. Like I read the synopsis, I see what people are talking about, say what happened. Yeah. So I've got a somewhat, roughly solid ground on what is going on. I don't know. I think I like that. Like I like that Leman Russ thinks Lorgar has some worthwhile things to say. Like his reading seat, just because it's funny to be like Leman Russ, the wild, stupid, drunken barbarian, reads what this quiet priest man like has to say. He's like, that's some good stuff. Like that, for some reason, stands out to me.
Because I would argue quite passionately that the most interesting relationship out of all of the Primarchs is, and by quite some margin, Roboute Guilliman and Lionel Johnson in the Horus Heresy. And I don't think any of the relationships come close. So, again, the actually people in the comments might not be happy about this, but actually people, if you shouting out any two names of a Primarch, any of Primarchs, let me just say, I'm going to bet they fall into one of four categories. And those categories are hates each other, loves each other, rivals, and the final one, and probably the most interesting one, is used to hate each other, used to love each other and now hate each other. Right? And that's probably the most interesting one. A meetup of Jagatai Khan and Magnus in 40k would be very cool. But actually, the most interesting relationship is the Lion and Guilliman, because no other relationship is like this at all. They're not rivals, but within one book, and this is a recent book, it was written in like 2014, Dan Abnett, the head writer of Black Library, so it's not just one author going off on one, it's a genuinely thought out relationship. Surprising how these things happen and how it matches up to 40k, isn't it? That book says that Roboute Guilliman admires Horus Lupercal and Lionel Johnson like only out of the Primarchs and looks up to those two unlike any of the Primarchs.
Like his older brothers in a way.
Yeah, like his older brothers. And it's not to say that there's not bits of the Primarchs that he doesn't admire. Of course there is. Like, Guilliman, I think quite famously calls Lorgar his brilliant brother Lorgar, and he admires things about Sanguinius. Of course he did. But the idea that he only admires Lionel Johnson above someone like Sanguinius, above the Dauntless Few. The Dauntless Few are the Primarchs that Guilliman says if he teamed up with someone like Fulgrim, someone like Ferrus or Dawn, then he thinks they could take on any other combination of Primarchs, which is quite interesting. But like he still only admires the Lion out of all of the Loyalist Primarchs. And yet, in that same novel, it also says that when the Lion comes back, he's like, oh God, why this guy? Oh, Jesus, this guy is the worst. Why did it have to be him? And that is a fundamentally fascinating relationship. Like, there is probably nobody in your life that you can actually say that you admire them more than anyone else, but you cannot stand to work with them. That's I don't even know how that would manifest. It's such an interesting idea. And the reason their relationship is so cool is because, you mentioned it actually earlier in the podcast where things have to feel earned as a reader. And their relationship in 40k is so earned now because we've gone through so much. In fact, the Unremembered Empire kind of section of the Horus Heresy, I would say, is probably one of the bits that gets a little bit bloated. We have a great number of interactions with Conrad Kurz and a Primarch, and then Conrad Kurz blows something up and escapes. God, they love that. But like the point is like we've gone through so much, and actually for a lot of it, the Lion was kind of slow to learn when it came to Guilliman, and the Lion gets humbled hard at the end, and the Guilliman, as very famously breaks the Lion sword over his knee because, to be fair, the Lion did kind of nuke his planet.
bit rude, that one.
But the Lion learns a lot, and the thing is the Lion is necessary to Guilliman. So in that storyline, people, a lot of Ultramarines fans understandably angry at the Lion and the Dark Angels. But the thing is, the Lion's actions were so necessary there because there are basically two people in the entire of 40k who can take down Conrad Kurz. Conrad Kurz is like god tier level powerful at that point in time. He is. There's a bit in like one of the novels. He's trying to find John Grammaticus, and he just knows where he is on the planet. And when that happens, I think the idea is that's his prescience, but that's not how prescience works. That's just knowing shit. That's a very different thing. So, the Lion is able to beat Conrad Kurz when no one could, even Sanguinius. Technically, to be fair, Sanguinius, when he fights Conrad Kurz, he is in his pajamas, but at the same time, the book does make it quite clear the two Primarchs with prescience, when they fight each other, they're just always going to be able to see and respond to whatever they do. But the Lion, with his super instinct, is kind of like a hard counter to Primarchs like Conrad Kurz and Sanguinius. So he actually does really well there.
There's no thought. He's just going, and you can't predict it because the Lion doesn't know what he's doing next. Although in a much cooler
100%.
way than he's just flying by the seat of his pants and winging it.
Yeah, definitely. And like the thing is about the relationship between Guilliman and the Lion is by the time we get to just like the end of Ruinstorm, the Lion is different. He is still pragmatic as hell. He will commit a planet to exterminators very quickly because he knows it has to be done. But he is now serving his brothers, and he knows that he has to get Sanguinius back to Terra. And he still loves his secrets, but the relationship between him and Guilliman is much better towards the end. And so now, the contrast between them meeting in the Horus Heresy, which is an incredibly tense affair, even before Conrad Kurz throws a bunch of Dark Angels at Macragge, the relationship was very tense. And the idea that they actually meet and if they break into a hug when they actually meet up, it will feel so earned. Whereas if Vulcan comes back and hugs Guilliman, it will be lovely, do not get me wrong, but it's not as earned. The idea that Guilliman and the Lion are actually best pals now is such an interesting idea for me. The comparison is, I would say, a relationship like Fulgrim and Ferrus. Fulgrim and Ferrus, we are told are best friends, and we're told they get along so well. But actually, in Fulgrim, in the Palatine Phoenix, I kind of why do you guys like each other? You have some vague love of perfection,
both making
stuff, but that's very popular amongst the Primarchs. So I never really got that. And actually, Fulgrim and Horus have a much more built upon relationship, really. But you're just told they're best friends. But with Guilliman and the Lion, it's much more different, where you are not told they are best friends ever, but actually they go through a lot together. They have each other's back through a lot of shit. And like any great friendship, they do argue hard at times, and they really fall out. So it actually will feel, I think it is by far, in my opinion, my favorite relationship out of all of the Primarchs.
I was gonna say they're probably close, like a second to me, for me, honestly. I think it was also an Unremembered Empire at the Light, isn't it? Guilliman's first reaction when the Lion shows up is he asks him have you come to censor me, Russ did our brothers, because it was did you think I turned traitor? And the Lion's you've done something much worse than turn traitor. I know you would never be a traitor. You've done something even worse with his little empire building stunt. At least I think I remember I saw that passage online. I'm hoping it's a real passage.
That's definitely a thing, and that's certainly the background behind the Lion's suspicion of Guilliman, this idea. And of course, in a way, because that's the thing, we don't actually know that they'll meet up and be best friends. It kind of hints that Guilliman will want to, be pals with his brother, but they could be combative, and if that is the case, it's a pretty good point to say. I mean, you are now kind of the de facto emperor, but I hope they don't, because I hate that storyline.
I was just about to ask you.
Yeah, one of the things that happens in the final Godblight book, and it happens in Wolf Time, where I hate the idea when within the setting characters go, Roboute Guilliman, the Legion builder, and it's what you mean the guy that broke up the legions? That's the Legion builder. It's so absurd. It's so stupid. Yeah. There's a character who finds a book called The Reign of Sanguinius and the Unremembered Empire or something like that, and the Emperor Sanguinius, and it's I literally read those lines and I was oh, not again, because it's such a stupid thing. It's something that's so easily explained with a 5-minute conversation with Guilliman. Oh no, I don't actually want to be the Emperor. I just had to consolidate my position, and so this was, I thought, the best way to do it.
I also couldn't prove he was alive anymore, so I had to do what I could.
And he gets apparently hung out to dry all the time for it. So God, I hope we don't have another series on that, because it'll just be a stupid civil war.
It's I think my ideal, what I hope comes of it, is that the Lion is bracing. He's not going in angry at Guilliman, but he's bracing for them to butt heads like they used to. And then Guilliman is just he's been dealing with the 41st millennium. Horus Heresy wasn't great, but I would argue that the Imperium by the 42nd, whatever we're at now, probably doing worse. So I hope like Guilliman's just like he's been tired for how many hundreds or maybe in like a millennia by this point, years he's been dealing with, and is just happy to see his brother. I think that's what I think I'd like to see.
Yeah, I think you're. Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think it would be really nice, and yeah, there's definitely a strong argument. I think there's the quote from Guilliman from I think it might be Gathering Storm, where he's like, better we had all died in the fires of Horus's ambition than live to see this.
Hell of a line.
He gets a copy of the I'm going to say it wrong, the Levitico Divinitatis,
Lectitio Divinitatus.
Yeah, there you go. You did far better than me.
I had to read a whole lot of Latin and Greek for history, so I got used to pronouncing it.
Nice. Nice. But yeah, so I've been finding out that like Lorgar's book is so fundamental to the Imperium. That's got to be a wild trip. That's got like to understand that, especially as the Primarch that
Monarchia,
the Ultramarine Sax Monarchia. So that's got to be completely mad. And I kind of would rather see Guilliman interact with most of the Demon Primarchs because it would be more interesting. So Lorgar, of obvious reasons. Fulgrim's a tough one because the Lion is the duelist, so seeing him take on a fully empowered Fulgrim would be just fascinating.
And we know what happened last time Guilliman tried to fight Fulgrim. That's what caused his nap.
Yeah, it's very true, very true. So yeah, and then I don't know, Perturabo's less so connected to the two of them, but I guess the Lion did give him all the siege engines, but certainly Mortarion, etc. It was much more interesting having it be Guilliman because the idea of them just trying to break Guilliman was just really interesting.
I would really love to see the Lion Guilliman and Lorgar react, because I know Lorgar, like Guilliman, he didn't hesitate to do burn down Monarchia, but he wasn't happy with it. And he kind of, I know he like privately confided with some officers. He's like, I don't feel good about that. Like this is gonna, in the long run, hurt more than it helped. So it'd be cool to see if 100%. They meet up. And I don't think they, get along. Demon Primarchs you can't come back from that. But it'd be cool if they have like a little moment where Guilliman's like, you were right, I was wrong.
I haven't spoke to many people that do the YouTube thing within the Warhammer space. So how have you found it? Because we've been doing it for a pretty similar amount of time, a chunk of time now, a couple of years. Well, at least for me, I don't know exactly how long for you, but how have you found it? Like, I think we spoke about it a bit on Warhammer Fest.
I like it. It's I am glad. Every now and then there'll be a moment where I do kind of wish I did a bit more serious stuff, but overall I'm pretty happy. I went with my shitposty, not taking things too seriously route. Just because of one, I just like talking about goofy stuff. Like my peak idea of Warhammer is everything is still the goofy, over the top. Like it'd go from a Space Marine killing a bajillion Tau to one Tau murdering like 5 trillion guardsmen, some stupid thing like that. I like the goofy attitude, and when I approach it like that, I feel like it helps. But and I don't know. I found it's also. I like the audience I've got for the most part. There's been a couple goobers in the Discord had to get rid of, but for the most part, no. I'm pretty happy with my audience. They're always supportive whenever I branch out or make something else.
Yeah, you have made non-40k stuff, haven't you? Which is pretty cool, and it works. It works well for your channel because, like, it's one of those things people say not to do. Find your niche and stick to it or whatever. And Warhammer 40k is pretty niche, but even within that, like, you talk about how you like doing. You sometimes feel like, oh, you'd like to do more serious stuff. It's interesting, I think, the lack of crossover there. Like, I was pretty shocked because I've done a lot of the gaming stuff as well. Because and I know you cover the game in a lot of your videos with your do's and don'ts, but like the lack of crossover I've noticed between those videos is amazing. It's so high, and of course the lore community is much larger, but I think there's a lot to it, because even if someone does like the lore and the game, that they might not like your style for both. If that makes sense. So yeah, and I've had that where like I've had gone the other way a bit, where I think most of my stuff has probably come out a bit more serious. I don't know exactly. It's tough to know exactly how you come across to people, but I think my stuff comes across a bit more serious, and I certainly like that. Like I say, I like big Primarch moments. I love I now stepped onto the tower was Lion L. Johnson.
Yeah.
I love those moments, but at the same time, when I talk to my friends, I never talk like that. I often wonder if I start doing that, if I do that little switch, and I'm going to try some stuff, I think, but it would annoy people. And then like people would be like, oh, no, you should have stuck with this kind of style.
It's, I would always say it's worth trying. I did have a couple branch out attempts that flopped. Like I made a game, because, I think, like Halo, obviously, I hope I'm not blowing anyone's mind, is not Warhammer 40k. Shocking, I know. But it's still kind of that field of sci-fi lore in the future. It's like, it's rough. Not obviously plenty differences, but there's some overlap in the audiences. I made 2 videos forever ago on just 2 games I wanted to talk about. Like, I put a lot of work into those, and they just kind of flopped.
Really?
Yeah, so
okay.
I think it's just like a matter of, it's always worth trying to branch out, I think is my point. Because, hey, if it doesn't work, it's one video, you go,
And to be fair, this is that a bit, I think, as well, because the YouTube algorithm is a weird beast.
If anyone knew how it worked, we'd all be rich.
Yeah, and I don't know about you, but I'm not there yet, sadly. And like, I don't do this full time. So like, if I'm busy some weeks, like, because we're doing something that weekend, I might not get long videos out. And that's like a big no-no. So like, I'm hoping I can add this kind of thing in, and it will make that a bit easier and hopefully get more content out. I don't know, but we'll see. I appreciate this has been the first podcast I've done, so it's probably been a bit rocky. I'm sure that this will be the podcast I'll look back on, and I'll be like, I need to get him back on because he was so rusty.
Yeah, well, for what it's worth, I've had a great time here. Thanks for having me on.
Oh well, thank you, man. Yeah, I thought for a bit, I'm like, who would I want to be the first guest? And obviously meeting you was awesome, and you're obviously such a cool guy. Love your channel, and like I said, I love your style, and I've thought a lot. In fact, one of the videos I'm working at the moment, I literally was saying to Caroline, my girlfriend, I was like, I'm going for a pancreas, no work kind of style, and she was like, what does that mean? I was like, I have to show you some YouTube videos. So yeah, I learned a lot from watching you, man, and it's pretty cool. But I should also say you do have your own podcast, Law Crimes, which I'll put a link to that and your channel in the description, just in case people want to go check those out.
We gotta get you on there one of these days.
Yeah. We think we talk about it when at Warhammer Fest, where you guys do the quizzes, and I'd be a bit worried. Because I do talk a lot about Warhammer 40k lore on my channel, and I worry I'd do it and get 0 points.
Well, if
just delete the channel then and there.
For what it's worth, just go any quiz I'm not running, I'm losing. So you can't look. If nothing else,
have the answers.
There's a bottom you can reach, and it'll be you and me down there together. That's the worst case scenario.
All right. Well, yeah. Thank you so much for coming on, man. And thank you so much for coming and watching this listening to this first episode of M3. Let me know in the comments who other guests would you like me to get on. So I'll see you next time. Bye, guys.
Everyone.